watching Will Travel Life, and thank you for being here. I'm Jennifer, and I have Daniel Edward with me today. Daniel is a fellow traveler, but not just a traveler. He's the cruise and travel director on the Noordam for a significant portion of our trip through Australia and New Zealand.
In the last few years, Holland America has changed their staffing profile. They've split the duties of the old cruise director into a cruise and travel director and an entertainment director. And the cruise and travel director is really designed to influence the travel experience for guests.
The last release, the man born is Daniel from England.
We talked to Daniel about how to help guests have their best travel experience.
The CTD is an undefined role still, and each CTD is really different. And the things they do are really different, and we don't quite know what to expect from each one. For us, probably not a huge difference because we're fairly independent travelers. But the first time we had one, she was game-changing. This is the best thing in decades as far as enhancing the guest experience, and it was the EXC Talks. Holland America was getting on board with, we're going to teach as we go, and we're going to open the world in ways that you might not have access to just by Googling something. And that's what the beauty of EXC Talks was for us, was finding these connections and these experts and these multimedia presentations that were just really well done.
I think you're right about the EXC Talks. I applied to join Holland America because of the style of presenting that we do here, because it's so unusual in the industry.
Yes.
We are not just bringing you physically to a place, but we're contextually setting up that place.
Yes.
And I think it's clear how much people want that, because the theatre is always full when we do those talks. And we're able to talk, and it brings it back to the fact that it's all about people, because we're able to put people into those talks and share stories that, yeah, you're right, we're not going to meet all of those people every time we go to each of these destinations. In fact, those people are hard to access, which is why it makes it such a great series. And so my first contract with Holland America Line was in Alaska, which is sort of Holland's baby. It's just like it's the heart of the company's calendar, and the EXC Talk series there is fantastic.
That was our
That's
first
the
one.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was our first one.
I think that's the crowning jewel in the EXC series. And there are EXC series for various different geographies, and it's a growing series. So over the years, new ones are coming in. There's a new one that's recently been launched about the Panama Canal. So if you cruise to the Panama Canal, that one's. And so each one, and they take, from what I understand, they take quite a bit of work to put together. Because you're trying to reach these stories, and everybody's got a story, but not everybody's story works in that moment. And then you might think about, well, we want to layer this person's story with that person's story. No, that's not quite gelling, but we really love this story, so let's move this one over here. And so there's a huge amount of production that goes into those, which is what set Holland apart for me. Oftentimes the equivalent role on other cruise lines, which isn't called the cruise and travel director, and that's an important part, by the way, we'll come back to that. But that person is on other lines introducing the shows, maybe doing a couple of parties, and it's fun. It's what I did on another line. But the depth wasn't there. The depth is added by bringing the travel part into the role. And I think you're right in saying that we each do it in a slightly different way. We do have guidelines. There is a role, there's a job description. But the nice thing about it as well is that I remember being told when I joined the company, this is the role, these are the talks, but you are the person delivering them. And if people don't believe in you, then it's not gonna bounce, it's not gonna jump out of the stage and connect with people. And if it's not connecting with people, then they're not gonna go on and share that story with somebody else. And so one of the biggest gifts that I feel I was given from the company when I was being onboarded and sort of taught the ropes, showed the ropes, was how to be me in the role, and the permission to do that. because there are things that other cruise and travel directors do amazingly well that I would be a disaster at, and equally the other way around. There are things which I really shine at, and maybe somebody else doesn't lean on that area. And so I like that there is some flexibility built into the role to allow an individual's talents to shine through and connect with guests in our own way. The other thing I would say is the thing which sets the role apart is because it's a cruise and a travel role, we really connect in with the destination. And so I'm in the Australia season this year. It's our first Australia season since the shutdown. I'm also going to be doing the Australia season next year. And so in that way, I'm becoming an Australia expert, which means that every cruise I know that bit more than the cruise before, which means that I'm getting even better each time at being able to either predict what people are going to love, to come up with some, out of the box ideas for people who I've been here 100 times before, but what can I do for the 101st time? And I also know more and more about those initial questions that people have. I've never been here before, and I know I can't do it all in one go. What should I do today? And I really like that, I know what I'm doing for a full year. That level of organisation helps us shine and helps us do it better. But also the fact that it's the same place really helps, because it lets us get deeper and deeper. And I think that's unusual in the industry. And lots of people join the cruise industry to travel. And if you want to travel, you want to see lots of places. I joined the cruise industry not to travel at all. Actually, that was a sideline of it. I joined because I loved presenting. And so I wanted to be able to present and share that side of things. I wanted to tell stories. And so I'm happy to go anywhere. So long as I can get into the stories. And I think the way they've set it up allows me to get in there.
I heard port talk throughout Australia, and it was different than a lot of the other CTV port talks I was hearing, because you were adding little stories and you were doing the Emu War and you were doing jail, but you still sort of had this is where you go, this is your currency, this is when you get off the boat, turn right, those are important things to know, But you're definitely adding some extra stuff. Then we get to New Zealand. You came out and you did a port talk, so I show up with, my little port talk and ready to take my notes or do whatever. And I've got an EXC talk. So I came back to the room and I said to Jonathan, okay, I'm not sure what that was, because it was an EXC talk without the multimedia.
So part of the port talk situation comes down to the cruise that we're on. And so we've got the EXC Talk series, and they're geographically centered for various parts of the world. Some of those series are sort of perfectly timed for the length of the cruise. Alaska, for example, we've got a 5-part EXC series, which works amazingly for those 1-week cruises that tend to run in Alaska. When we're in Australia, we did a rare voyage, which is the circumnavigation of Australia. We don't do that every year. And so we had 35 days of cruising, and I think about half of that ended up at sea and half of it in port. And so we had a lot of time to be able to go into more depth about the ports coming up. So it's not really part of our standard program to be going that much in depth for the individual ports. But because we had the time and the space to do it, we were able to play with that. And so that was why I was able to write them myself as well, which I loved the opportunity to do that. But the reason I put in, at the beginning, I put in those stories that sort of connected in with place in a context, was because of how much people love the EXC Talks. And so I took that idea from the EXC Talk series of bringing a story, something that people are going to connect to and remember the talk by. And then after that, I gave some facts. Dun, 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 dun. And the people who came to those talks came to me afterwards, and they didn't say to me, oh, we really liked that you mentioned the opening hours of the museum of wherever. Nobody came up to me and said that. We liked that you mentioned that the green bus went to... No. We love that story about the prison escape. The Emu War. No kidding. And so those sorts of things were the things that people remember it by. And by giving people something to remember it by, they also have a hook for remembering the other details about, I can learn more at the museum, or I can go on a trail that mimics the path of whoever. And so I loved going deep into those spaces. And the thing that I've then come out of the back of that is I've been collecting up the brochures and the leaflets and maps. People love maps.
Yes.
So that I can then show people on the map what I was saying in the talk. This is where it is, and you can see this is where the ship is. That's really useful. But on a shorter cruise like what we're now on with the New Zealand itinerary, it's shrunk down to just over 2 weeks rather than a full month. And New Zealand is a smaller country, and therefore there's less distance between ports, and so we lose our sea days. So we have sea days at the beginning and sea days at the end. Well, there's no point giving people factual information at the end, because they're like, well, we've already been there, we can tell you now. So I'm condensing everything at the beginning.
Okay.
And so what I wanted to do, really learning from the style of the EXC talks, but delivering it in a port talk style, because it's not an EXC talk, is saying, well, here's an overview of the country. Here's a port's highlights. It's not about one port, because I've not got the time to talk about that in so much detail. I'm going to draw out some highlights, but I want to weave it in with a storyline that you'll remember it by. And in this instance, it was the Dutch story of New Zealand, because it's Holland America Line.
Absolutely.
And so I thought, well, let's connect it in with our story.
Yeah.
And then by way of that, I'm also able to say, oh, by the way, in this area, you'll be able to see this. And in this area, go and see this. But it is, in these shorter cruises where there's fewer sea days, there is less time to be able to go so much in depth.
Right.
Which then makes the personal conversations more important. Because people would then say to me, oh, I heard you mention about vineyards in the nature talk that you gave. Do you have any more information about that? Where should I go? And then I can say, oh yeah, well there are a couple of places that you can go. Hawke's Bay is a really good place for vineyards. So why don't I get you a couple of things about which vineyards are open, or which shore excursions run, or whatever it might be. In many ways, that makes better relationships. The port talks that we did in Australia, we got fantastic feedback for them, and I loved doing them. And I think it was no secret that I loved doing them.
Yeah.
But I spent that time researching, writing, and presenting those talks to get them as detailed as they were. I can use all of that same time in this itinerary having one-to-one conversations.
So where do people go to have those one-to-one conversations with you?
So I tend to do it in the sea days. I tend to spend the whole morning either in the theatre or the Rolling Stone Lounge. So I have those sort of my bases, because I don't have a desk on the ship. And so I like to use the lounges for that. And then in the afternoons, that's when I do my research times. And so I'm either researching people's questions to then get back to them with a detailed answer for their question, or people will go and ask someone to call me. And we've always got those phones on board. And so I'll then just go and meet them, have a coffee in the Explorations Cafe or in the atrium. That's how I like to do it. Because then you know that, I can prepare something for somebody. If somebody says, I really want to talk about cricket. I love cricket, and I want to see if is there anything that I can go to that connects with that whilst I'm in Australia, because I know that there's big Australian cricket. And I was like, well, I'll bring a couple of ideas, and we can sit down and go through the ideas. I also like, this happens quite a lot actually, people say, can we sit down and chat about London? I'm planning a trip to London, and I really want your ideas. And so I spend as much time talking about home as I do about the places that we're visiting.
That's interesting.
That's good fun.
If you had a choice to write EXC Talks or perform EXC Talks?
Wow. I love the EXC Talks series, and I would love to write them. That said, I always think you perform best in your own words.
Yes.
So, and that's one of the great things with the EXC series, is we're given the script, and then we're told read that script and make sure it sounds like you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going through one at the moment that somebody else has written, and they've written it in an American voice, which I don't have. And so there's certain phraseology in there which we just don't say, and so it would sound very odd coming off of my tongue. Mm-hmm. And so now I just tweak the script to match the way I talk. Mm-hmm. The script stays the same in that the story doesn't change, what happens in which order is set, but the language sometimes is just tweaked a little bit to make it more me. Mm-hmm. When I write my own script from scratch, well, I don't have to do that part. It's there. It is me.
Yeah.
I write as I talk, and so I love writing it.
So would that be a CTD role, to be an expert in a region or an area and to be actually scripting or producing some of those EXC talks and then performing them?
It's not in the role. That's not to say that they wouldn't use a CTD's expertise though, because I have known other CTDs then outside of their contract then have a land-based contract to work on another project. We do use those skills elsewhere. So some of the other content on the stateroom television, like the port profile stuff, has been put together by other CTDs in their vacation from the ship. They might do that as a separate contract. So you never know.
We felt like we heard a lot of guest complaints.
I was going to speak with you one day and somebody came and just kind of ranted.
How do you do that part of the job?
I think the real crux of the job is you're a people person. If you like people, you know that people have their ups and they have their downs. A lot of the time, people have an expectation in mind that then changes, whether it's the weather. We missed a port because of weather, and so we have to reframe that story. That's a huge part of my role.
Yeah.
I'm here in many ways, I think, to bring the positivity in workplaces, in home settings, in life. They're looking to be guided. How am I supposed to behave? How am I supposed to feel? And people like that guidance. And as the sort of the face and voice of the ship, I think it's my role to help people see what a good way to see the world is. And sometimes people do have frustrations. That happens everywhere. Yeah. And I'm always happy for people to share that with me. I wouldn't say it's my favourite part of the job. Of course it's not. My favourite part is sharing people's travel stories.
Yeah.
But I will say some of the most meaningful moments in the job are when somebody comes to you with a problem, you work out how to fix the problem, and then at the end of the cruise, they are your best buddy.
Yeah.
Because they know how much you work to get them from there to there.
Sure.
And that's not just me, that's not just my role. And that's one of the things which I like about cruising compared to other environments, because I managed 10 minutes in a hotel, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me at all. But the nice thing about cruise ships is it's teamwork like I've never seen anywhere else. Everybody's in it together. People are looking after each other, guests and crew. People look after each other in both directions. We're here for such a long time. You're going to have good days, you're going to have less good days. And so when you see somebody's have a less good day, you help them bring it back up to a good day. And then people on a good day, you can help them make it a great day. And there's that community that works on cruise ships. And so I like the fact that you can share a comment with any member of staff across any department. And because we all know that you're on 24 hours, we can work it out. We know who to phone. We know who to, and sometimes they'll say, I need to talk to you about whatever it might be. In which case, let's sit down and talk about it, because there's always a solution.
Sure.
It's about being able to listen and hear what it is that solution might be. But it really comes down to being authentic. If you don't like people, cruising's not for you. And if you like people, then you're gonna love it.
Yeah.
I get people coming up to me at all various times of the day, and sometimes they'll come over to me with such purpose. I think, uh-oh, what have I done? And they'll be, I wanted to tell you that was the best talk I've ever seen. And I go, oh, yeah.
Daniel, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Watch our entire series with Daniel Edward. He has so much to offer in the world of travel, psychology, and entertainment.